Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 67, season 2 of the Mario and Chaos Show. I'm your co-host, Mario Mancini. I'm a former WWE wrestler and co-instructor of Paradise Alley Professional Wrestling, along with Paul Roma. Big Steve Tracy. And the man behind the glass every week, second generation grappler, the master of the pirouette elbow, Mr. Paul Perez, the 2000-something inductee into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. In the screen, as you can see, is a man that has been in the wrestling business for 34 years. He's done everything from soup to nuts. The emphasis is on the nuts. He is none other than the guardian of chaos, Big Daddy. Big Daddy, what's going on?
Mario, it's great to be back. We're in the middle of a deluge outside right now with this tropical storm moving through, but we are on episode 67, season 2 of the Mario and Chaos podcast. Now, fans, not only is it a podcast, it's a show. We're available on all social media platforms, iHeart, Apple, Stitcher, iTunes. We're on YouTube now, Facebook. Go out, and if you feel the need, give us that 5-star rating so we can get ourselves in maybe to the top 100 podcasts, maybe in the pro wrestling community. It's great to be back.
It is nice, Big Daddy. It is raining out. We do have a very special guest. Now, we had the president of the Yes Network on here. Thanks to you, Big Daddy. It was an honor to have John Filippelli on our podcast. We have a very special guest to me on this show. This gentleman that walked in the Passarella's Quest in 1990. And I was putting them through the same thing I put everybody else through. The only difference about this man is I think he saw that and he struck up a conversation with me, and he brought up a subject that was near and dear to my heart. And unfortunately, unlike you, Big Daddy, who I just kept pounding, since he did bring up a subject that was near and dear to my heart, the subject went a completely other way, and I became a very happy man. In turn, this man also took me to dinner at Grandpa's, which I thoroughly enjoyed and really got a kick out of. He became a very, very close friend of mine. We lost touch for a little bit. Reconnected in 1999. I'll tell you all about it, Big Daddy. I'm sure. I don't know if you were there or not, but
you know what you are, Mancini? Do you know what you are? If you're a Major League Baseball fan, if you watch Bull Durham, if you know who Crash Davis is, and do you know what it takes to get thrown out of a Major League Baseball game? What's the phrase, Mancini, that will get you tossed out quicker than the shit through a goose?
Cocksucker.
You're a cocksucker. That's what you are. You're a cocksucker. You can't remember the 1999 NAWA Slam Jam. I was there.
Well,
my dressing room was in a mop closet. I don't understand why you get the brain of an elephant. You're like Mike Francesa, and you can't remember the 1999 NAWA Slam Jam.
I finally know why. Because I spoke to the source, who is our guest this week. And unbeknownst to me, myself, Bundy, Bruno, Alpha, and select other few were in a dressing room. Your dressing room was upstairs. It wasn't
Jim Cornette.
It wasn't even in the vicinity of my dressing room.
All right. Introduce our special guest, because I'm putting him on the spot as soon as you introduce him.
Our guest this week is the creator and owner of the NAWA, and he is none other than the Godfather, Tony Capone.
Welcome, Tony.
Tony, welcome aboard, brother.
Brother, it's been a long time. I'm glad to be back. Thank you for the invite, Mario, Guardian of Chaos. It's a pleasure after all these years to be back. I'm glad to introduce what's going to be happening with the NWA, and I'd like to clarify a lot of things, a lot of misconceptions about the NAWA, the Westchester County Center, and there's a lot of things behind the scenes that I will be answering tonight. Shoot,
Tony,
shoot
I have
video,
to be
whatever
honest.
you want, you let me know, and I'll give you the exact answer.
Well, Tony, from what I understand, the birth, if you will, of this company is deep-rooted with Herb Abrams, no?
Well, let me just go back real fast and not take up too much time.
No, take your time, Godfather. Take your
I
time.
was a major wrestling fan from the day I came out of my mom's womb. I came out kicking from my mom's womb. God rest her soul. She was a major wrestling fan. She loved the WWF. She loved Mario Mancini. She loved SD Jones, Tony Garea, all the old-time wrestlers. And how I actually started in the business goes back a couple of years before I met Mario also. Originally, when I wanted to get into the business, I hooked up first with SD Jones. He was the first person to take me down to not Gleason's gym. It was right next door, and it was being run by Bobby Bold Eagle. I got into the ring with Bobby Bold Eagle, and if anyone knows old-time wrestling, he's not a big guy. Godfather in his prime, 6'1.5", maxed out at 375 to 400 pounds in the ring. He was not the style I was looking for. I didn't want to go to Johnny Rodz because I never really was a great fan of his. I never really respected his work. It's a straight, honest truth. So I was looking for another school, and I was told about Pasquarelli's, which was unofficially like a WWF early day training camp. Guys went there. If you wanted to get into wrestling, that's the school you went to.
True.
And I recall.
Well, Godfather,
traveling
I'm
up
going to be honest with you for a second, Godfather. I'm going to
Go
be
ahead.
honest with you for a second.
Go ahead. Shoot.
Oh, I'm going to shoot. If you would have went to Gleason's and you would have went to Johnny Rodz' school, one thing I could guarantee you, you would have been stretched. That's for sure.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Johnny Rodz was an excellent trainer. No disrespect against him, but he just wasn't. I didn't feel like I was a great fit for his training camp. So when I went up to Pasquarelli's back in the early days, I was originally introduced to Tony Altamore, and my first time in the ring there, actually it was a Saturday, and Dr. D. David Schultz was there the first time I got into the ring up there. And let me tell you something, he put us through the mill in a matter of a couple hours while I was ready to walk out the ring and never come back. It's a tough business, not like it is today. Old school wrestling is totally different than what you're watching on TV today, which is what I call grappling more than actually the science of wrestling, the technology of wrestling, the psychology of wrestling, which I was taught from day one. I was introduced to Mario Mancini after David Schultz left, and I'll tell you, in the beginning, he put me through the mill, and I noticed that. The only thing I had in common, I was a major fan of Mario's at the time, and I brought up a conversation that he was Italian, I was Italian, and we talked about a couple things, and that broke a barrier where up to this day, I owe my credit to the start to the business. God rest SD Jones's life and everything else. He was a great wrestler, but Mario Mancini was the start of Tony Capone and the envision of a future organization, which turned out to be the NAWA, which was incorporated right when I met Mario back in 1990. It was late 89, early 90s.
Right, right.
So I thanked him many of times personally, but on the air tonight, first I want to give all due credit to Mario for making me who I am today and bringing the NAWA to where it is today. And there's a lot that we're going to go over if we have the time. After I trained with Mario, Mario got me onto a couple independent booking shows. One of my first shows was with an organization called IWF, which was based out of Connecticut. It was run by a gentleman named Mr. Mike Peskin, who's now in Florida. And he gave me opportunity with his company. And I just spoke to Mike this past weekend, and I thanked him for that opportunity, because it was for guys like Mario and Mike Peskin and other people in the organization in the early days that believed in me that got me to where I am today. And the rest, to be honest with you, is just history. And to answer, I don't want to take up the whole show, but to answer what Mario had said, after '84, when I started on TV, public access in New York, a wrestling show called Wrestling Connection. It was a weekly show, and it was the inside of wrestling, what was taking place at the time. My co-host at the time was a female named Tanya, and it was called the TNT Connection. And the show itself was called Wrestling Connection. We traveled throughout the United States. We did some house shows together. We were at WrestleMania 3. Whole long story. But then developed the NAWA back in 1989, 1990. I was still wrestling at the time, but I had the envision of hopefully one day in being a top organization. I am disappointed, I am deeply honored for where the NAWA is today. What upsets me is that major talent that went on to WWF, WCW, ECW, and many other organizations has never given credit, not to the NAWA, but the NAWA organization. There was a bunch of us. There was about 10 of us, Mario included, that never got the credit for the superstars that came out. And we're talking stars like Tazz, Tommy Dreamer, Little Guido, Mike Fury, who's also known as Primo, Public Enemy, all these guys, and also ECW famous, commentator who ended up in WWF, WWE, Mr. Joey Styles. His first ever appearance was on an NAWA TV taping. When the UWF,
Tony, we're gonna cover all that tonight. We're gonna break all that down in the history of the NAWA, Tony. I've been doing my research. Obviously, you appointed me personally as commissioner after Bruno Sammartino from the NAWA Slam Jam Westchester County show. So I am glad that you are running down the history of the NAWA for the fans out there, the North American Wrestling Alliance, and what Tony Capone, the Godfather, if you will, accomplished in the business, and that I was lucky and fortunate enough to be a part of. We're going to run it down. We're going to run down certain shows, and we're going to talk about the major stars that you brought in the late 90s from ECW, WCW, WWF, all the names that you talked about, from Low Key to Sabu to Tazz, and we'll get onto that. And I want to make this one quick point, and we'll get back to Tony Capone, the Godfather, if you will, here on episode 67, season 2. I virtually feel the same way, Tony, as you do. The Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy, owes a lot of his career, not only to the Samoan dynasty, but in particular, one person who influenced me from my early years, and that would be my co-host, Mario Mancini. I feel the same way as you do, Tony. I can't speak to it enough. I've said it enough. I don't want to go gushing over here, but it's the truth, and I feel the same way. He is responsible just about 100% for me and my character and my creation in this business. So
let me tell you something.
I would
Mario
also like to
Mancini,
pay homage to Mario.
with the utmost respect, Mario Mancini was a WWF superstar in the 80s. Let me set the record straight also. Mario Mancini was The Undertaker's first match ever in the WWF.
Bingo.
Not like they're saying recently that came out in the last couple weeks with his so-called announcement of retirement. Mario Mancini has not been given credit for the type of wrestler that he has been in the business.
Well, you could see it in what he does now, Tony, and I'm going to let Mario speak for himself. That's what Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling and the Paradise 4 is based upon. And the Carpenters, that Paul Perez, Big Dave Paradise, a.k.a. Steve Tracy, Pretty Paul Roma, and Mario, that's what they do now. That's what Mario did back in the 80s into the 90s is what he continues to do here in 2020, along with Paul Roma, Perez, and Big Steve. Not only do they teach ring technicians and how to get into the business and how to become a professional wrestler, they teach the young generation how to be men, how to have values, morals, and they're there as a pop figure like Alpha, the Wild Samoans. So that's what Mario does still to this day.
Hey, Daddy, let me just real fast take a couple minutes. I just want to give a little history about the NAWA, and then I'll take all your questions.
I would love it.
The NAWA started, it became the NAWA because at the time, NWA was going out of business and AWA was going out of business. So I merged them both together, and the North American Wrestling Alliance is actually a combination of AWA/NWA. That's how we became the original NAWA. That's how it all started back in the early days. At the age of 27, I had a nationwide contract with Sports Channel America, and I took the contract away from from UWF and Mr. Herb Abrams. God rest his soul. I personally got along with him very well.
Now hold that point, Godfather. Hold that point for the fans out there that are listening. Herb Abrams of UWF and Dark Side of the Ring on the last season, that Herb Abrams, cocaine and hookers, Godfather.
Between me and you, I could tell you a lot of stories, and I'll tell you the dark side. I did see that program. It is, in my opinion, about 95% true.
Spot on, Tony. Spot
on. But there was things that happened behind the scenes also that a lot of people don't know about with Mr. Abrams and myself and the organization. In the early days, NAWA was co-promoting UWF. And I remember one of our first shows was at Mount St. Michael Academy, my alumni in Bronx, New York. And we did a show there. It was a co-promotion show under the title UWF NAWA. And we had there at the time current superstar Triple H in one of his earliest matches ever, when he was Hunter Helmsley or HHH, whatever it was called back then, under UWF. And this is probably 1988, 89 roughly. And then when the demise of UWF came on board, the main program director, a gentleman by the name of Brian DeRico, was very, very close with me and asked me, would I mind taking NAWA nationally? And I accepted the contract. The difference between NAWA success and failure back then is that NAWA had to pay for production every week. NAWA paid for everything from wrestlers, so on and so forth. Where if we touch on it, how all our superstars and production crews left the NAWA for ECW's origination. And let me tell you, ECW's origination started at the Manhattan Center, New York City, on a house show there, and they used none other than our license for that show. And I was approached.
Well, the New York State Athletic Commission is no one to be trifled with, Godfather.
That's correct. And I was approached then by Paul Hyman telling me what was happening in Philadelphia, what they had planned. And to be honest with you, I never jumped on board because personally, I knew Paul Hyman back in the days, and I did not trust him. But they ended up giving everyone, instead of salaries and working pay, they gave them small percentages of the company. And that's how they succeeded for so many years and eventually got bought out by the WWF/WWE. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that's never come out. And this is my first time in 30-some-odd years, 36 years in the business, that I'm exposing a lot of stuff behind the scenes.
Well, let it all hang out, brother. We've got a lot of questions for you.
Because my biggest complaint in this business is that all the major superstars that came out of the NAWA, not one of them, except for Tommy Dreamer, who recently recognized the NAWA as one of his starts, and Mike Fury as Primo has recognized the NAWA from day one. But everybody else, from Joey Bonsignor to the Rochester Roadblock, who was nobody back in the days, never gave credit to the NAWA. And I'm back now to put the NAWA back on the map and for the organization to get the credit that it deserves. This is not about the Godfather, Tony Capone. This is about the organization, the original NAWA. Like a very good friend of mine back in the days, I know Mary knows him very well, God rest his soul, Roddy Piper. We are one-of-a-kind company. We are often imitated, but we were never duplicated. If you look at our shows and our tapes, they were classic events for those times.
Well, I can speak to that, Godfather, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I can speak and vouch firsthand, maybe not the early years in the 80s of the NAWA, but the late 90s into the early 2000s. Tony, you know I was an integral part of the NAWA, and the talent that you brought in for the time, whether it be Shane Douglas, Sabu, Tazz, we talked about it. We're going to go down the list, and the unbelievable event, especially at the Westchester County Civic Center, and I talk about it. It's legendary here on our show, the NAWA Slam Jam. Everyone from Psycho Sid Vicious to the Wild Samoans to the Pitbulls, the Public Enemy to Jim Cornette. I learned more in that one night, and it was a double shot weekend, I believe, Tony, because we had a show the next night, and then next month it was in Orange County Fairgrounds with Bret the Hitman Hart, and Mario's going to address that.
That's correct.
I learned more in those couple of nights from Slam Jam, from Jim Cornette and some of the guys that I talked to than I had in my whole career. So you don't have to, you can validate it to our fans, but to the panel here, we're going to expose it. We're going to talk about it. And that event in particular was one for the record books. It could have went down as a pay-per-view, and especially what Shane Douglas did when he told Paul Heyman to kiss his ass when ECW was basically ready to fold.
He came out under a mask. He revealed himself. When he became champion of the company, he ended up taking the ECW belt, which he had from that past Sunday, and he threw it into the garbage at the Westchester County Center.
That's what I want to talk about, Godfather.
I have that on tape, and it's going to be exposed very shortly.
That night, for the business of that time, WCW, WWF, WWE, and ECW, there was only three. Like you said, AWA and NWA had gone to the wayside. That night and that event that we were all a part of, and what Shane Douglas did and the talent there was history making. And Tony, I think people have forgotten about what happened that night with Bruno Sammartino also being there. One of the biggest nights in pro wrestling history in the Northeast area, perhaps the country.
Bruno Sammartino, that was the first time that he's ever been back at the Westchester County Center in approximately 20, 25 years. And that was old man Vince Sr.'s territory. And I was the first company ever to take it away from the WWF. And it was the first pro wrestling show that was run there outside of the McMahon organization. The talent that we brought on that show, the tape from that show, it's a 3-hour tape. Every match is a phenomenal match. And like you said, from Jim Cornette to be there, from King Kong Bundy, the Pitbulls, the Bushwhackers, Sid Justice. The list goes on.
And the ECW heavyweight champion at the time. And what I want to talk about for that night, Tony, we'll run it down. We got plenty of time here. Paul Perez has nowhere to go till about 2 o'clock in the morning when he has to go to work. So we can stay here all night. I want to talk about.
I never get tired of looking at Paul Perez, by the way.
He's a good man, Paul Perez.
I love him. I'm glad to see him again after all these years. He looks great.
He does look great. I want to ask Mario this question, Tony, and I want to know if you were involved in this. That night at the NAWA Slam Jam, and we'll run it down, Mario took on King Kong Bundy, and perhaps one of Mario's few heel appearances. I reviewed it again tonight. I sent the clip back to Mario, the heat and what he drew that night against Bundy. And to traditionally have Mancini be a heel and Bundy basically be a face, whose idea was it? Mario and I have talked about it many times on this podcast, on this show, and I would like Mario to address it.
Well, basically what happened was Bundy was the heel and I was the babyface. We had an argument in the dressing room, a friendly one, because he wanted to put me over as payback what I did for him in New York. He said he was going to go to give me the avalanche. I move, and I just cover him. I said, I'm not doing it. He said, we're doing it. I said, Chris, we are not doing it. And he goes, why do you have to give me a hard time on this? I said, listen, forget about the friendship. Let's think of the characters. Mario Mancini does not go over on King Kong Bundy. So intermission came. Bundy went outside into the arena. He comes back in, and he's staring at me. And I said, what? He goes, well, I was out there for intermission. I go, yeah? He goes, well, they kind of like me out there. I said, well, let me get this straight. I'm the heel. You're the baby face. And he just kind of grinned and went, yeah. I said, okay, we'll work that. I'll work it. Not a problem. I'll be the heel. I don't have a problem doing that.
I noticed about that bout, Mancini, and again, we've addressed this several times. Tony, I think I sent you the clip also, and Mario and I have talked about it with Paul Perez on this podcast before. The heel gimmick and the heat, especially at the end of the match that you got in the Westchester County Civic Center. Mario, I think that could have been a calling. Looking back on it now, all these years later, I think Mario Mancini might have had more of an opportunity had he had flipped maybe and been a heel. Your thoughts on that? And then, Tony, your thoughts on that match that night. Mario?
Well, for one thing, I'd like to thank Tony for, giving me the opportunity because most fans know me from watching me on TV, but I take it there are a lot of fans that says, hey, I was at a house show. I saw you working with, Iron Mike Sharp or Lanny Poffo or whoever was in New Haven to see me against Gino. Or there are a lot of people in New Haven that watched me in the house show against Morocco. But, I appreciate the opportunity to do a house show. The real comical part about that is Tony had called me. And he said, listen, I'm putting this show on at the Westchester County Center. I remember the conversation verbatim. I go, I'm getting this show. I'm putting on this show at the Westchester County Center. And I said, how'd you get that? And he said, yeah, don't worry. This was his answer. Listen to Tony's answer. He goes, yeah, don't worry about it. I got it. I go, okay. I said, well, I haven't worked in 7 years. I said, and I'm going to be pretty rusty. It's really not a good idea. And I said, by the way, just for ha-has, who was I working with? And he said, Bundy. And I said, well, when is it? What's the date? And, I showed up. And, I told this story many times. As I entered the Westchester County Center, the popcorn hit me in the nose. And I've been out of the business for 7 years. And it was an empty arena, and I saw the ring, and I walked up the ring stairs, and I leaned over the top rope, and I was weeping like a 4-year-old. And Tony had seen me, and he just came walking up to the ring, and I just looked back, and I looked down, and he goes, "You okay?" I said, "I'll be all right." He goes, "All right." So, you know, that's how the whole thing started. But that night, you know, Bundy got me back. He gave me a receipt because one of those clotheslines are real stiff. Like I said, I haven't been in a ring for 7 years. So, you know, it was definitely a night to remember. The most important thing to me, another gift that Tony Capone gave me, is I never got to talk to Bruno because he was so busy with his color commentary between TV tapings and everything. And I got to sit there for over an hour and spill my guts to him. Exactly why I got in the business. He was the reason why I got into the business. You know, while kids were you know, worshiping Reggie Jackson and Muhammad Ali, it was him. You know, and I just spilled my guts to him. And at the end of the conversation, he looked at me and said, "Mancini, I wish you were my son." So I'll always remember that. I wasn't as aware as you were on that night, Big Daddy. I guess, you know, I'm not knocking you, but I stuck to the traditional rules of wrestling. Old school. It's like when I started working at the law firm in '95, you know, the lawyer that I worked for rubbed his hands together and he said, "I can't wait till you bring in all those pictures." I go, "What pictures?" He goes, "Well, you took pictures with Andre and Hogan." I go, "Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind?" So I guess I have a big regret that I didn't take a picture with Bruno that night, or somebody didn't snap a picture of me and Bruno together. I don't have it. I will never have it, but I do have the memory in my mind, and I have you know, Tony Capone to thank for being able to sit next to my childhood hero, and not be disappointed on who he was, because there's a lot of people that admire somebody their whole childhood and everything. When they finally meet him, unfortunately, they say, "Wow, what an asshole." And that's unfortunate. But in my case, I was blessed because Bruno was everything I thought he would be. And, you know, I have Tony to thank for that, because I would have never had that opportunity to talk to Bruno and tell him how I felt if he wasn't there and I wasn't booked on that show. So that will always be a very special night in my career, that I was able to sit there with Bruno and just tell him everything. The only regret that I have is that my brother Ralph, may rest in peace, he wasn't there, because, you know, when I got up to go to the bathroom in 1973, when I was 7 years old, and he had that 12-inch black and white TV with the broken knob with the vice grips on it to change the channel, and you know, wrestling was on, and I was half asleep, and he said, "Come here." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "See that guy?" And it was Bruno. He said, "That's the greatest wrestler that ever lived. That's Bruno Sammartino." I was hooked from 7 years old on. And Perez will tell you, when we worked the Mohegan Sun is about the time Bruno passed away. And when they did the tribute on the screen, once again, I was crying like a 4-year-old. So, you know, he meant everything to me. And he's the reason why I became a professional. Bruno is the sole reason why I became a professional wrestler. I wanted to be the next Bruno. It didn't work out that way. It worked out the complete opposite. But he was the reason why.
Mario, if I could stop for a second. We're going to talk about the NAWA comeback now and what my plans are. But just to let you know, and don't shed no tears right now because we've shed a lot together.
Yes, we have.
I've reached out to every photographer that had access to the shows. And I'm waiting for pictures to come in from that night behind the scenes. And there might be photos of you and Bruno's together.
That'd be amazing.
Because I remember my brother Peter.
That would break me down.
Big fan of Bruno's. And I know this one particular guy who I spoke to for 2.5 hours last night about the business is looking for the negatives right now. Nothing's on digital back then. Everything was negatives. So there is a possibility still.
That would break me down.
If I could interject about Bruno for a second.
Absolutely.
There was a point, I don't recall what year it was. It was early days. 89, 90, 91. It was right before, or I think right after I had met Mario and we got involved in everything else. And I did a show, I'll never forget this, in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And if I recall, the time was Dino Sana, if I'm correct, from Pottsville, Pennsylvania. I actually just reached out to him recently online, and I'm waiting to hear back from him. And I sent him many thanks. And I'm trying to get footage from his tape show, and I'll tell you why. The guest that night was my childhood idol, Bruno Sammartino. And he was at ringside. And what Mr. Sana did that night is Bruno came into the ring, and I had the gimmick as the Godfather going on. And it was like Bruno was passing the torch to the Godfather Capone.
Well, that's priceless, Godfather.
Yeah, words can't even describe that, man. That's incredible.
I'm hearing emotion, thinking about those days, and the things that Bruno told me. And Mario, you know Bruno, you met him at the center, you know him through the business. I admired his cauliflower ears from the business. And to be honest with you, if you look at my left ear, I started developing a cauliflower ear, and I was so honored and respected. I said, I got the Bruno ear. And it's something that's inside of me that I never told anyone. But my ear started to fold up from being in headlocks and everything else over the years. And I have what Bruno Sammartino had, which a lot of people might not even know, like in the business or whatever the case is. But as a true Bruno fan, that was one of my proud moments, that my ear was turning like Bruno Sammartino.
Well, Godfather, I want to speak about this because like Mario had just, hey, GG, I see GG.
Hey, what's up?
As Mario said, he's so thankful to you, Godfather, for that night and being able to pour his heart out to Bruno for an hour. And that's his childhood hero, just like you're talking about in Pottstown. I also want to pay homage to you, and I use that word a lot, Godfather, for what you did for me. Because what you did for me was as big as what you did for Mario. I was able to meet Bruno that night and talk to him at length and take photo ops. And the only reason, Mario, I was ever to take, I have all these photos and videos, is because I wasn't fortunate and blessed enough, like Perez and yourself, to be a full-time grappler, to be good enough to step in the ring. So where was I? I had to get myself over as a manager, a broadcaster, a promoter, an interviewer, vignettes, taking the occasional bump, trying to hook on with a grappler. So I was hanging around, and I was blessed and fortunate enough in the other way to have those photo ops. And because I never signed a contract, you, Perez, you were on national TV.
Well, not only that,
anything, just like I said in the Hall of Fame, that's all I have.
That's not only that, Big Daddy. SD Jones had to nurse me through a battle royal in the Boston Garden because Bruno was in the ring. I froze.
I remember you telling that story, and we'll get onto that. And Godfather, again, from the bottom of my heart, that was the biggest moment of my career for you to entrust me to take over, gimmick or not, the office for Bruno, and then run your company. Go ahead.
The NAWA would never be as successful as it is today. Tony the Godfather Capone would never be as successful as it is today if it wasn't for Mario Mancini. From the bottom of my heart, and I'll tell you why. When I talent, especially from the WWF, and I used to tell people in the business, from Hercules, Ray Hernandez, who was a very good friend of mine, God rest his soul, to Ravishing Rick Rude, when I told them that Mario Mancini was my cousin, and he asked me to give you a call, they opened up their arms and they had the utmost respect for Mario Mancini. The problem with Mario is that the McMahon organization didn't realize what they had in Mr. Mancini. That's the issue.
Hold
You
that
know what?
thought, Godfather, because I think
I
about
personally have to thank Mario Mancini for the success of mine in the business. And I also have to thank, God rest his soul, Herb Abrams. Because during those shows that we did, I ended up getting national TV at the age of 27. The youngest person ever to take a company national on television nationwide.
Now, Godfather.
Mario addressed the situation.
There is only. I just want to make this clear right here and right now. And it means a lot to me. There is only one NAWA, and that one NAWA is your company. One. Correct?
That is correct. And I'll tell you what's going on as we speak today.
Is this breaking news, Godfather?
This is breaking news. This has been going on for
Breaking
the last 10 days. There has been, first of all, footage of the NAWA, the original NAWA, that's been circulating on YouTube recently. It's been out there for a while, and today my attorneys sent YouTube a letter.
Well, don't send them after me.
They're not coming after you because you have all the rights in the world.
All you have to do is relinquish everything to them, Big Daddy, and you're good.
Story of my life, Mancini.
All you gotta do is just get the permission from the company, like Vince McMahon, the rights for the company. And these companies did not do that, and they're marketing NAWA. And I found out yesterday that somebody bootlegged a copy of one match of the NAWA Star Jam and put it on YouTube. And we are sending.
What match was that, Capone?
I don't want to mention it because I don't want them to start searching for it, because it wasn't under the NAWA's name. It was under the actual wrestlers that fought that night with their manager, who was very famous and someone that you admire personally. And I'll leave it at that. I think you can figure out who it is.
I think I can. I think it's the same person that Mario Mancini listens to every morning.
Well, I happen to meet him at the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame and got along very, very well with him. So, yeah.
Well, Godfather, again, I want to thank you for being here on the Mario and Chaos show, the Mario and Chaos podcast, if you will, episode 67, season 2. Fans, I want to just throw this out there. Go out to sweetheel.com. My boy, Mr. Hempel Stillskin, for all your CBD needs. It's great for inflammation. It's great for everything in sports and well-being and injuries. And as a New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer, which Mancini failed to recognize at the beginning of the show because he was responsible for it partly, go out to Mr. Hempel Stillskin, sweetheelcbd.com, sweetheel.com, and you, Tony, use the promo code Chaos, and you get 25% off of all the products.
I'm going to go there myself and buy some products off of it.
So this is what I want to get to. I would like to run down for the fans out there, and then we can still get onto the history, fascinating and riveting history, Tony, of the NAWA from the early years on into when we were all together as family. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Tony, that night, Budweiser, and you could speak to this, Top Contenders, Inc. were the sponsors and responsible. Can you speak to Top Contenders, Inc.?
Yes. Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people never picked that up. I had a contract
Tony, who are you
with
dealing
Budweiser.
with here, Tony? Tony, who are you dealing with here? You're dealing with the Guardian of Chaos, your former commissioner. Go ahead, Tony.
Budweiser accepted a deal to go to the county center to be the exclusive beer distributor for that particular show. Top Contenders Incorporated. In the early days, I was promoting boxing with a gentleman I went to school with named John Beninati, who was a boxing matchmaker for Don King back in the days.
A pugilist.
Yes, sir. And I started Top Contenders as actually Tony Capone. Top Contenders turned out to be eventually NAWA Corporation. We finally changed it over to it. But it was always Top Contenders Incorporated, doing business as North American Wrestling Alliance, NAWA. And then I have the certificate here where we eventually changed and became a corporation in New York State as North American Wrestling Alliance, NAWA, which I have the papers here that my attorney just got today to send to YouTube to get these videos off the market.
Now, another question for you, Tony. I'm glad that you spoke to Top Contenders Inc. and the whole Budweiser connection, because it was very important. I remember it. I also want to talk about an organization that was originally modeled after Glow, and you came up with this yourself, and that was Blow. And fans, don't get crazy out there. The Beautiful Ladies of Wrestling. That's when we held the press conference at the Dole Center in Mount Vernon, where we introduced the signing of the original hardcore icon, and that was ECW legend, the Sandman. But could you speak to Blow and the concept of Beautiful Ladies of Wrestling?
Blow was a division of NAWA at the time. Female wrestling never got the attention it needed, and there was some great female superstars. And Blow, which I still have the website, blowwrestling.tv, back from the early days.
Mancini, relax, Mancini. It's Beautiful Ladies of Wrestling.
Beautiful Ladies of Wrestling.
I think he's got a boner.
We had people like Missy Hyatt, Bobcat.
Well, that's what I want to speak to, Capone. I want to speak to this. There was your
so
roster.
Much talent there as a subdivision of NAWA, and that never got credit for anything.
Well, here was some of your roster.
Start right after I started Blow Wrestling. That's when the WWF started pushing female wrestling. At that point, not trying to give them credit or whatever the case might be to ourselves, but want to do just strictly female type shows. And at that point, it is what it is today.
Well, here's some of the, and I'm sorry, Tone, because Mario's used to this, Perez is used to this. I do it every week. This is what I do. I cut people off. I talk at length.
I'm used to you, but after 35 years, I'm used to you, brother.
Tony, and some things never change, but some of the grapplers, the female grapplers that you had on the roster for Blow, number one, the girl there for that night for the press conference was Honey. She really was an incredible lady, an impressive lady, but you also had, like you said, Missy Hyatt. You had Kimona. You had Little Jeannie Sweet Destiny, who went on to WCW. You had Bobcat, who was unbelievable. You had Kara Slice, the cheerleader. I mean, you really had quite the legendary Missy Hyatt. I mean, you did have quite the impressive roster of ladies that were going to be for the Beautiful Ladies of Wrestling.
You're absolutely correct. And to be honest with you, like I said, after all these years, it truly, I'm not hurt. I'm insulted that no one ever went back to NAWA, Tony Capone, and what I did for these people in the business. A lot of people, majority of them, never gave us credit. And when I say we, I'm talking about Mario. I'm talking about yourself. I'm talking about a guy named Fester, a guy named Ken Levy.
Wait, hold that thought, Capone, because I'm going to bring this up right now, because I know he's listening. Mike Henry, a.k.a. Fester, because that's who he looks like, Uncle Fester. All he needs is a light bulb. Now, Fester was a pretty smart guy. I want to bring up something here that he said to me about Mario. He did run your locker room, and he did a pretty good job, and he even went out and he managed a couple of times. But I was talking to Fester recently, and he debated with me that Mario Mancini was not a pro wrestling WWE legend. I want you to address Fester, Mike Henry, right now on behalf of Mario Mancini. Go ahead, Tony.
There is, in my opinion, my personal opinion, some indirect heat between you and a couple guys in the business. And I personally think that a way to get back at you, that they were ribbing Mario or insulting Mario, but it really was geared towards you personally.
Well, it didn't
That's my
offend me,
personal
that's for
opinion.
sure.
That's my personal opinion. I'll
Well,
tell you
Big
right
Daddy,
now,
this is
I
my
am
fault,
still
Big
in
Daddy.
contact. I am still in contact with Fester, and he's working a lot of stuff behind the scenes right now to get this off the ground. I have the utmost respect for him. He's a very intelligent person, and the ideas that he's come up with now to relaunch the NAWA, which our official website's coming out on August 1st, which is the same as it was before, www.nawawrestling.com, which will debut again on August 1st. And I'll be speaking to you about it personally. I'll be speaking to Mario about it, which we already touched base a little bit on. But it's going to be highlighting the NAWA from the old days. It's going to highlight all the superstars from the old days. And as a matter of fact, I just got off the phone with, if you remember in the NAWA days, I got off the phone with Jeff Miller, the Metal Maniac, 2 nights ago. He's in Hawaii.
Yes, I remember the Metal Maniac. Who doesn't?
And he has the utmost respect for me because he said, I came into your wrestling room 1 month after training, green, and you took me under your belt and brought me around to every show that you were doing. And from Hawaii, brother, he gave me the utmost respect.
Oh,
And I
hey,
appreciate it.
mahalo, pupule, wiki. And I'm going to address Fester right now. I'm going to address Mike Henry right now because I don't really give a fuck. I always got along with Mike Henry. I have the utmost respect for him.
But Big Daddy,
and for
before
what
you
he
go
did
on,
for me. Hold on, Mario.
wait,
And
no,
for
wait,
what he
I
did for
gotta
me.
say this though.
So
because
if Fester thinks he's getting at me, okay, for a guy who I respect and love, I'll say it on the air right now, he could kiss my fucking ass.
Big Daddy, this is my personal opinion. It's
I
never
love
come out of his
Fester.
mouth.
I
This
love
is my
Fester.
personal opinion.
Go ahead, Mario.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were gonna go there. I didn't know you were gonna go there, and I wish I knew because I would have prepped you. I would have prepped you because you know, the Godfather sent me a screenshot of that same Fester calling bullshit on the Undertaker's first match. So Fester actually went on social media and said that's a lie. His first match was against Mario Mancini. So, at one point, if he said that to you, on another point, he's calling bullshit on that.
Well, he never said he disrespected you. He just said that, hey, Chaos, hey, Big Daddy, why are you always calling Mario Mancini a pro wrestling legend, a WWE legend? And I said to him, it was a very normal, civil conversation, and I respect what the Godfather's opinion and his take on it. Fester and I are very civil. He helped me out a lot in my career. We're still friends. We still talk. I was in touch with Fester just a couple of weeks ago. He never disrespected you, but he said, stop using the term legend. So that's what I'm addressing.
I agree.
Oh, thanks, Mancini. Thanks, you son of a bitch.
All right, let's leave it there. Let's move on. There's a lot to touch. Let's move on.
All right, here we go, Godfather. We're going to break it down, okay? It's well documented, the stars that you have had, and I want Mario to maybe sit down and maybe he can put his 2 cents in on this too. He's got nice legs. They're like bowling pins. Here we go. Godfather. The opening bout that night was a gentleman who I just talked to tonight, and I sent him some footage, and he loved it. The Inferno Kid with Bobcat against Devin Storm, WCW star Crowbar. That was the opening bout that night at the Slam Jam. What an incredible bout. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, basically behind the scenes, myself with the NAWA president, Robert Champion, who I'm still
Robert
in touch
Champion,
with.
and the COO is Joanne.
He is the president of the NAWA, and he is back with us. He is coming on board again.
Great guy,
I
Bob
was just
Champion.
on the phone with him a couple of days ago. And when our creative team sat down, we wanted to make it a unique show, and we tried to grab talent that was breaking through or that would make a difference in the business. And that's why, even like yourself, as a manager, color commentator. We brought you on board from the very beginning. Basically, there was a couple of reasons. If Mario said, give this guy a shot, it was a done deal. And in regards to yourself personally, it was back to Mario. He's like, I got this guy. I want you to meet him. And if
Well,
you remember,
Godfather, if you remember correctly, and again,
Right.
this is what I do. If you remember correctly, Mario did vouch for me, but there were a couple of other people that spoke up for you to bring me on board even before Mario. That was Mark Thomas, the Condor.
Correct.
That was Jackmaster John Diamond. That was Tough Tony DeVito, and that was the Giant Primo Carnera. Because you know I ran with those guys, so all those guys vouched for me to you.
Correct. And all those guys you just mentioned were early NAWA wrestlers, superstars. And I'm in
Correct.
contact with most of them still. And there's calls out to some of the other ones or texts out to get back to me about it. I'll tell you one thing. I was locked out of Facebook for over years as Tony Capone. There was a whole thing because of my real name and the gimmick name. For some reason, they gave me a very hard time. I had to send them documentation of my real name. I had to send them corporation papers of the company. There was tons of stuff. And believe it or not, the 4th of July, last week, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I get an email from Facebook saying, didn't say anything. You said, here's your temporary password. Go change it. I was in shock. And when I first got back to Tony Capone on July 4th, 1 week ago approximately, I had 193 friends from the old days, the true wrestling people that were involved in the business.
Well, we're lucky that most of them are still alive.
In the last week, we just hit early this afternoon 3,000 members, friends. We went from 0 to 3,000 in 6 days. The word is getting out there that the NAWA is coming back. And NAWA is going to give credit to all the wrestlers, all the behind-the-scene people that made the company what it is today.
Well, the word should be out because the people and the talent behind the scenes, whether it was Robert Champion, whether it was Fester, whether it was Joanne, whether it was Mario Mancini, and the talent that you brought in and the sponsorship that you had, the word should be out and people should be excited. And once we go through the talent and talk about this, the NAWA coming back could be nothing but good things. Even if it's just footage to put out the history, they could make a show just about the NAWA and what you've accomplished, Godfather.
One thing I'll tell you right now, and this is a exclusive that's not known yet. NAWA right now is, or Tony Capone on behalf of NAWA is signed a deal to write a book about myself and the organization, which will come out sometime next year. It's being written now as we speak. That's number one. Number two, the footage, I've been in contact with an online company that I might give them the rights to market the NAWA, every episode, every shoot interview we did, everything from going back to Blow to Wrestling Connection from 1984. That's going to be coming out shortly.
That's some amazing content, Godfather.
What
Amazing
we're planning
content.
on, everything has been on the hold due to what's going on right now.
I gotta be up at 4:30. Would you be able to feed the cats and put that in the fridge?
Yeah.
The pasta's on the stove. I just gotta let it go off.
Oh, in the fridge.
Yeah, when it's cool, could you just put it in the fridge?
We're
The
frozen.
show on a Saturday night, and this is an exclusive right now. First time that it's been out there.
Hey, Tony, we lost you there for a second. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure what was going on. We lost all sound there for a second. Are we back, Double P?
We're back. We're back.
We're back. No, we're back. I saw that. What I said was that we've been talking to the Westchester County Center, and depends on what's happening with the virus. We are planning a 2-day weekend NAWA convention with all superstars
Nice.
and a NAWA reunion show
That would be awesome. That would be
on a
unbelievable.
Saturday night with old-time guys, legend show with current wrestlers. This is an
So what you're
exclusive right
saying,
now.
Godfather, let me understand this right now. You're
Okay.
saying that it's in the works right now, and I'm sure Mario will be a huge part of it. You're going to run an NAWA Legends convention and then perhaps run a show with current stars the same day? Breaking news here on the Mario and Chaos Show.
Yes, it is. That's what I'm saying. And this is breaking news. It was going to be debuted on my website coming out the beginning of August, but
Well, what I want to address,
now-
Tony, I want to get back
That means
onto the
Big
card.
Daddy has to make a comeback, Big Daddy.
well, I'll tell you another thing. In the last couple of weeks, I've gotten calls from different promoters from Florida, Ohio, Texas, Vegas, and California that want to co-promote NAWA shows in those states. And I'm seriously considering, depends on what happens with the virus, to possibly take this back to a national company with our type of old school traditional wrestling. New talent would be there, but it's basically not the stuff that you see on TV today. There is a lot of true wrestling fans, old school wrestling fans that are still out there.
Oh, there
And
sure
they've been-
is.
And they've been forgotten about. And the marketing now that's out there, to me, it's not old school wrestling. It's basically grappling. You don't do promos yourself anymore. They tell you what to say.
Well,
We're back
everything's
in the
highly
days-
scripted.
Correct. They're all scripted now. We're back in the days the guys spoke what was going to take place, who the feud was going to be with. Am I
Let's run
boring you,
over the
Mario?
card.
Am I boring you, Mario?
No, this is,
No.
listen, Godfather, this is Mario every week. We're going to run down the card, Godfather, and then I want you to comment on the matches. And Mario, maybe what you can remember from that night. Give me a moment. I will run down the matchups, and then I want to comment from the Godfather. This was perhaps one of your biggest shows, if not the biggest, next to maybe Bret the Hitman Hart. But as far as talent in the ring, here we go, fans. NAWA Slam Jam 1999 from the Westchester County Civic Center, brought to you by Top Contenders, Inc. and Budweiser. We opened up with the Inferno Kid and Devon Storm, who was crowbar in the WCW. Now, both these men went on to the big time, and every name I'm going to mention here virtually ended up in ECW, WCW, or the WWE. The Head Shrinkers with Afa, and at the time it was Samu, Big Sam, and it was Lloyd, who we were just with at the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. L.A. Smooth, I believe, Lloyd Anawai, unbelievable person. And they took on the legendary Luke and Butch, the Bushwhackers. Also that night for the light heavyweight championship, it was the Shark Attack Kid against the Black Panther. We had Ace Darling against Doink. I want to address that in a moment with you, Capone. We also had Tough Tony DeVito from the Baldies and myself in his corner against the Jackmaster John Diamond, who we just had on a few episodes ago. That's got the highest viewership on YouTube out of all our shows. I find that hard to believe once we had John Filippelli on from the Yes Network, but Diamond's still relevant, and he looks unbelievable. Also, we talked about Mario Mancini went up against the legendary King Kong Bundy. We had a 15-man battle royal where Shane Douglas showed up under the mask. Primo Carnera originally won the battle royal, but Shane dumped him out, unveiled the mask, the biggest night and perhaps in wrestling history at that point. We also had your future champion from the NAWA, Vic Divine against Psycho Sid Vicious. Now that card right there, and here's another match, Public Enemy against the Pitbulls with Jim Cornette. What a lineup, what a card. I want you to speak to the matches, the talent, and what happened that night. And Mario, if you would, speak to what your impressions were that night besides Bruno Sammartino. Go ahead, Godfather.
We tried to organize the best available talent that was out there at the time. There was
I think we lost him. Double P, I think we lost
Yeah,
the sound.
well, he lost the sound again. He froze.
Tony Capone frozen in time. Hey, listen, the Godfather. There was nobody that did it better, but speak until he gets back. Mario,
Oh,
your
he's back.
impressions
I
of
think he's
all the
back now.
talent. Are you back, Godfather? We lost you for a minute.
I'm back. I'm back.
All right, run it down, Godfather.
Let's start with Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette, at that time, was never really seen on the independent circuit. For stars like Jim Cornette and just the whole package together, we designed it to be not just a regular house show, but it was designed to be like a mini pay-per-view event, which, may I remind you, the Westchester County Center was sold out that night, approximately 3,700 seats on the two-level arena.
Over 3,000 that night, Tony, for sure.
That's correct. Correct. It was, I think, 36, almost 3,700 capacity. Back in the days, I was shocked. It went through Ticketmaster, Ticketron. Back in those days, we weren't selling personal tickets, and I got daily reports, and I couldn't believe that the place was going to be sold out. And it was just about sold out a day or 2 days right before the event. There was major money put into that event from myself, major promotions done. But we wanted to design it to where
People
people
losing
in the
them.
business like Bruno Sammartino, Jim Cornette had an opportunity to showcase themselves after so many years of being involved with the big leagues, if you want to say. And this was proof of a young, up-and-coming company that can make it if they wanted to. On a sidetrack on the same topic, the biggest downfall of UWF, because I believe they could have been one of
Yeah, the connection. Are you back, Godfather?
I think he's got a bad connection there. He's still frozen.
Well, this is what I want to talk about with the NAWA. Tony, the Godfather, is undercutting himself, I believe. At that point, the NAWA was no startup company. At that point, like the Godfather said, the AWA was gone. The NWA was gone.
Correct.
There was the WWE. There was WCW, and ECW was having problems at the time, losing their talent. So in technicality, for all intents purposes, at the time there in the 90s, Capone, you were technically the third, perhaps fourth largest company in the country.
Actually, that's absolutely true. And part of it was I saw like the eventual demise of ECW, and that's why I grabbed some talent from them to our company. I'll tell you, the Shane Douglas deal, let me tell you what happened with that. If I'm correct, if I'm correct, he had won the belt Sunday night, or he just did a TV taping or something on Sunday night.
Yes, he did.
As a champion. I don't know if he won the belt that night or he had the belt. And I got in touch with Shane on Monday morning. And he's like, best friends. Hey, F ECW, I will come on board. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this, and that. I met all his needs, and I told him what I wanted from him. I wanted him under the mask. I wanted him to win the belt from Primo at that time. And the whole ECW throwing the belt in the garbage thing, to be honest with you, I was shocked. I personally did not know that Shane Douglas.
Well, that's to talk about what he's talking about, because we're having technical issues here tonight. Shane Douglas, to do what he did as the current ECW champion back then in 1999, was huge in the business, Tony.
Correct. And that particular ending to the show was phenomenal. When he pulled off that mask and came out as Shane Douglas, the crowd popped like you couldn't believe. That ECW's champion that was just on TV 4 days later is here at the Westchester County Center in New York and becomes the NAWA heavyweight champion.
And then he tells Paul Heyman to kiss his ass.
Correct. And I had that all.
Mario, I want to bring you in on the conversation, Mario, if I can. First off, you look tremendous. You look like you're very relaxed, man.
We had all the original footage.
Mario, your impressions that night of the whole product of what Tony did, the Godfather did, how he ran moving forward, leading into Orange County, Middletown, New York, and the whole Bret Hart scenario, and your impressions of Tony Capone, the Slam Jam, and what he did for the time, coming from someone who was in the WWF, such as yourself.
Well, I have to apologize because I played baseball. Yeah, I played baseball with the saber-tooth tiger, and my lower back is killing me, so I can't sit at that dining room table on that chair. I had to come into my recliner. So I will say this. As somebody who worked for Vince McMahon for exactly 7 years and 9 months, we rounded off to 8 years, but it was April 26th of 92. If I made it to July, it would have been 8 years. The only other experience I had, not feeling any different walking in to a WWF show, was walking into an NAWA show. It was the same feeling. It was the same atmosphere. Being president of an owner of Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling, I never really had an appreciation about a promoter in trying to promote a show until I had to do it myself, and be successful at it and have more failures at it than success. You have a crowd of 600, then you have a crowd of 110, you have a crowd of 400, you have a crowd of 91. So it's a hard business when it comes to that. And, you know, especially when you have to balance the checkbook, you know, there's a lot of money coming out of your own pocket. So I have a greater appreciation and marvel at the fact that Tony Capone put 3,700 asses in the seats. You know, that's an amazing feat, other than the WWE. So from somebody who spent 8 years in the WWF, you know, spoiled, used to going, working in front of 3,500 to 20,000 people. You know what I mean? There was no difference walking into the NAWA. Not only the
wow, what a compliment! What a compliment!
Not only the atmosphere, but the way Tony ran his business. You know, the way he ran the company was, you know, basically the same. And you know, the boys had the same respect in the dressing room. And you know, there wasn't a bad word said. And well, you know, it was a phenomenal night. I'm glad I said yes.
Well, and to even speak to the attendance, Mario, when we went to Orange County, jammed in well over 1,000 people in the Orange County Fairgrounds. We went to Mount Vernon, the Dole Center, well over 1,000 people. Every show that I worked for the Godfather, I never walked into work in a WWE locker room. So to have you make that compliment to the Godfather, and then from what I've experienced, that's pretty huge, Mancini. Godfather, can you speak to that? I think we lost
him again.
Episode 67, season 2 of the Mario and Chaos Show.
You can't make it up, folks.
We got him back
Hey,
finally.
we're having a good time. Listen, the education.
Let me just tell you, let me cut you short a second. I friggin' switched a week ago from Time Warner to friggin' Spectrum. I got highest speed fucking internet, and this is the shit I get from that. We're gonna hear about it tomorrow morning. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, it's the real little things that fucking tick me off.
Yeah.
Well, Godfather, the fans are missing some important information because this is breaking. No one in the current day has a clue about the North American Wrestling Alliance and the impact that you had on this business from the late 80s into the early 2000s. People don't understand and realize, and there's been one proponent, not to pat myself on the back, who has consistently, and Mario can vouch for me, ask Cam Perez, who has consistently over the last 20 years, and especially even more over the last 5, that has continued to put the shine and promote and talk about NAWA, and that would be the Guardian of Chaos.
I'll have to give you credit on that. I've seen a lot of your podcasts. You have the utmost the company,
I don't think he
and
paid
I
his cable
personally
bill.
thank you for that. You've given me credit. You've given me credit, and I'll tell you, it wasn't about Tony Capone. It was about the wrestlers. We all worked together.
Tony, you were very benevolent. You treated the boys with class. Not only, I'm not going to put out your business. Not only financially, you treated the boys, like Mario said, like Vince did. That was your reputation. You were very generous and very benevolent. That's why the stars came to you out of respect, and they knew they were going to get treated with class. Maybe that's why he can't pay the cable bill. Capone, are you there? He looks great, though. Is that the NAWA title, Mancini?
Well,
It
let
is.
me just say something. I don't know if I'm back or not.
Yeah,
But
you're back.
they knew they were going to get paid. That was the whole thing. And Mario, I want him to address, it was so funny because I always used Mario's name to break the ice with a lot of superstars.
So do I. So do I.
Mario, tell him the story that we talked about from the county center.
Oh, no, not the county center. The one I remember the most was
Tell him.
I'm sitting in my office. It's about 2:00 in the afternoon on a Friday. And I'm getting my two daughters. It's my weekend. And Capone calls me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm working." "Yeah. Can you come to Middletown, New York?" I said, "What?" I said, "What?" He goes, "Well, you see, I booked Bret Hart." I go, "Yeah." "Well, you know, he really didn't want to take the booking." He said, you know, because he didn't know me. I'm like, okay. "Well, I told him you were my cousin. So he's coming. So I need you to show." I went and I grabbed my daughters and I went shooting up there to show my face. And I'm like, and you know, sadly, that was shortly after he got the boot to the head from Goldberg, and he was pretty much out of it. But and that was another night I didn't see Big Daddy because I stayed for about a half an hour, and then I went home.
See, I want to address this, and Godfather, I want to address this again. Not only did he not really recognize me, although we did briefly speak at the NAWA Slam Jam, while he was at the autograph session for Bret the Hitman Hart in Orange County, I was in the ring announcing the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Another night that Mancini didn't see his old buddy, the Guardian of Chaos. And I'm going to speak to this, Godfather, what you did that night. And it was courtesy of Mario Mancini, no matter how it happened. You were solely responsible for bringing back Bret Hart to New York City for the very first time since he left the World Wrestling Federation, WWE, at that point. That was another impactful night that should go down into history in the annals of professional wrestling. From Shane Douglas that night in the ECW Championship at Slam Jam to Bret Hart and his return to New York City with the NAWA.
Well, let me address that. Bret Hart at the time was hard to deal with personally. He had I think a family friend member, if I'm correct, her name was Marcy, that
Yes.
did all his bookings at the time. And there was a list of requirements: limousine to and from, first class hotel, first class airfare. And I'll be honest with you, that weekend, the first show he did was Middletown, New York, and we made a shitload of money that night.
Well, the next night we had a double shot in Mount Vernon.
Correct. We had a double shot in Mount Vernon at the Dole Center, and we actually had Mount Vernon High School.
At the high school.
Back to back. It was back to back. And then on the Sunday, we were supposed to do a show in Connecticut, which at the last minute, I found out the person that was co-promoting with me didn't held up their side of the deal on the amount of guaranteed tickets, so that show was canceled. I don't know if you remember this. So
I remember that, Tony. I do remember that show.
Supposed to be a 4-day show weekend. It ended up being a 3-day show. And what ended up happening is we made a lot of money in Middletown. We made a lot of money at the Dole Center. But then Mount Vernon High School, we were doing in association with the police DARE program. And they sold tickets, but the arena wasn't the amount of people that I expected, which would have been about 1,500 to 2,000.
Well, this is what I remember about that night, Godfather. Yeah. There was a decent crowd at Mount Vernon High School. That's your old stomping grounds.
Correct.
You have heat with me, Godfather. You know that, right? You have heat with me, and I'm going to address it right now, and I had it on video, and I posted it before. That is the night. Not only was the main event Sabu against Tough Tony DeVito, that was the night that Primo Carnera destroyed the whole locker room and every match in the ring, with the exception of Sabu, he interrupted. And that's the night that you interrupted me interviewing the heavyweight champion, Vic Devine. You came in with Primo and you stiffed me and you hit me with the microphone. And I owe you a receipt, Godfather. And when I see you, don't
Anytime, brother, I'm ready for it. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready for it.
Mancini commented, he goes, why did the Godfather smash you in the head with the freaking microphone? I went down like a sack of potatoes, Godfather. I still love you.
I was actually aggravated that night with what took place in Mount Vernon. There should have been an extra about 700 people in the audience that were paid for. And it was just a personal thing that...
So you took it out on me?
No, it wasn't directed towards you. I took it out on you. But it was the arena wasn't the amount of people that the actual ticket sales. Like nowadays in the business, there's shows where they give guys 5, 10 tickets. They buy the tickets themselves, and no one goes to the show. But in the meantime, the promoter sold 1,000 tickets.
I want to bring up a couple of names from that night and from your tour. Names that really stuck out to me that now I look back on. You also had some young stars, whether it was the pop punk kid, Judas Young, and then other people have stolen that name since then. Judas Young was incredible. You also had Tazz, his cousin, Chris Chetty, on that show that night, who was an incredible, incredible performer. He was also in Orange County. But this is a group that impressed me. Donnie B and the Backseat Boys. You're tag team champions.
The Backseat Boys?
The Backseat Boys. They were...
Is that like synonymous with the Backstreet Boys?
Yes, and they came out to their song. It was Donnie B, it was Johnny Cashmere and Trent Acid, and those were Tony Capone's tag team champions, and they were hot. Now, who is Donnie B related to? Is he related to Nova?
I think he was related to Nova. But I'll tell you, you're bringing back old school memories. And
I'm an old school guy.
One person we never spoke about that left down south and came to the NAWA and ended up going to WWF approximately 2-3 weeks later at the Manhattan Center was Sean Waltman, the Lightning Kid, the 1, 2, 3 X-Pac. He got his break he was a decent star down south. I brought him up to New York. Next thing you know, Vince McMahon steals him. I go see him at the Manhattan Center, and he's there. Then eventually hooked up with Razor Ramon and the whole 9 yards with the gimmick. But he's another star.
Some of the other talent.
Me credit. He did back in the day. And I know he had some personal issues, whatever the case might be. I did reach out to him, or I'm trying to reach out to him. I have not heard back recently from him, but that's somebody else I want to, get in contact with.
Another couple of guys, Tony, that you used on these shows and that were a big part of your organization, Nunzio, and also someone that I believe Mario worked with. I'm pretty sure he worked with Perez. May have even worked with this gentleman too. And I'll never forget when you brought in Cousin Luke. Mario or Perez, did you ever work with Cousin Luke?
I did not.
No.
He was quite the character. Can you speak to
we
Cousin
Luke on that show also? I'll tell you, we tried to make it as cutting edge as possible for that time. But if I could just address one thing that's really historic that I want to talk about is the NAWA belt that I have on my shoulders right now.
Please, please.
This belt originated in the late 1980s. This belt has been held literally around the world by Hercules Hernandez, by Rick
I think he said Rick Rude.
Jimmy Superfly Snuka. There is so much talent. Shane Douglas, Mike Fury, Primo. This belt, myself personally, this belt originated originally in the UWF. And I was back then the UWF North American Super Heavyweight Champion. And that's what this plate was on here originally, was Super Heavyweight Champion. And then the plate came off and it said the Godfather. And then after that, every star that had the belt had their name engraved on top.
Well, that just speaks to the class
This
of
is the
organization
original
that you
from
ran.
back in 1984. And I'll give credit to Reggie Parks, belt designer extraordinaire in the business.
Yes, a legend.
One of a kind, and he's the only person I would ever trust up to today. I think there's Dave McMillan or Dave Million who took over for Reggie Parks, and our belts now are going to be made by their organization again. They are incredible belts. They're not like belts that are made nowadays. And I just wanted to bring that up because this particular belt has literally been, I mean, it traveled with Snuka. It traveled with Ray. Ray took this when he went to Japan for a while as the NAWA champion when he fought there and for Mario would know Inoku, or I forget his name out there.
Antonio Inoki.
Correct.
Well, what I want to talk about, you're talking about Hercules Hernandez, Godfather. Our last show for Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling, the last event and the last show that we had was on Friday the 13th, and that was the Ray Hercules Hernandez Memorial Tournament that we ran in honor of Power and Glory with Paul Roma and Hercules. So that was our last tournament that we had, and Showtime Marcel Williams was the first ever winner. So we had a huge tribute on part of Paradise Alley for Hercules Hernandez.
I'll tell you, God rest his soul, Ray and myself were very, very, very close. He taught me the psychology of the business. We had a match one night, Ray and myself, and I was supposed to do like a splash into the turnbuckle, take him out from there, give him the bulldog into the ring, do my splash closing, and out of the clear blue, he puts his foot up in my face. And he slams my nose, which still bends nowadays, on the side.
Like Mancini's from David Schultz.
I tell you, it still bends on the side. He gives me the boot to the face. Billy Silverman was the referee. I go onto the mat.
I think we lost him. Are you
We
back,
lost him again.
Godfather?
Nope, he's still out.
Well, when Godfather comes back, we're going to have to start wrapping this up pretty soon.
We finished the match. We continued. We ended up finishing the match. We go back to the dressing room, and I'm like, what the fuck was that all about? Brother, there's only so many positions in this business. I'm trying to teach you. You got to do whatever you can to keep your position. You got to try to make your...
Godfather, I think we froze again.
Yep.
Never trust your opponent. And I remember when I got my first match ever in the WWF was a house show match in Portland, Maine, and I fought Greg Valentine that night. And I remember going into the ring, we did our show and everything else. Go back to the dressing room, my clothes are not there. And I was about to get pissed off. And Valentine takes me on the side and says, brother, you find out who ribbed you, you keep it quiet, and tomorrow night when they're wrestling, you rib them back. That's how you gain respect in the business.
Well,
That's
Mario
old
has
school
always
wrestling.
said that. Mancini has always
old
said that,
school
Godfather.
wrestling.
That's a great story. But what I want to do now, we've run extended time. Tony, we'll have to get you back on again. There's no two ways about it. You're an interesting listen. Everything that you've done for us and everything you've done for the business, we're going to have you back on. So I can't thank you enough, NAWA owner Tony Godfather Capone, here on episode 67, season 2. I want to hand it over to Mario, and then I'll let Godfather give his salutations, and we'll wrap it up, Mario.
Well, thankfully, I'd like to welcome back Tony back in the professional wrestling where he belongs, because he certainly was successful with it. I know I'll be talking to him every week now, which is a joy for me, a la like opening up Paradise Alley so I could see Roma Perez every, all at the shows once a month and at the school all the time. So again, I have a newfound respect, being a promoter myself, of how difficult it really was. But I know I'll be talking to him on a weekly basis now. Plus, we have personal things to talk about because I'm in a rut, Big Daddy. I'm in a rut.
Tony, give your goodbyes and let's wrap this up.
I am in a rut, which
Let me just say something. Big Daddy, I want to personally thank you and Mario. I truly believe that we need to do another episode because there's a lot more that needs to be talked about.
We need to do
a lot more.
Maybe we'll do part 2.
Yeah,
we'll definitely do a part 2.
But I just want to say that a couple things were.
He looks
Lost
great
him again.
He's frozen. He looks good when he's frozen, right, Mario?
Yeah.
The Godfather. Mario, let's wrap it up.
Due to the weather, I wasn't able to go up Monday, but I will be there this Monday night, and I'd love to see you there. I'll be there at 6:30. And number 2, I just want to say, August 1st is our official website relaunching, and all you guys are involved in it. I'll be speaking to you personally about it. Rick, I'll be calling you in the next couple of days. Again, it's www.nawawrestling.com.
I believe he said www.nawawrestling.com.
Yes.
All right, brother. Take us out, Mancini.
Before we go, Big Daddy, I'd like to give a shout out to my guru. My guru's in another country. Her name is Cheryl. And, she's been giving me some advice. Now,
I thought I was your guru.
Well, Cheryl is a very beautiful woman.
Let me tell you something.
She's one of those women.
Big Daddy, if you looked like Cheryl, you would be his fucking #1 person, man.
Well, let me tell you something. Cheryl's the kind of woman you look at Facebook and you go, wow. But you know what? After the wow, and I spoke to her at length, and one time was a FaceTime conversation that was really long. And once you get to know her, you really appreciate how sapio she really is. So I like to give a shout out to Cheryl for helping Mancini get through his woes. Other than that, I will speak to Mr. Capone probably tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to episode number 67. Possibly, if Tony is available and hopefully my back is better, we can do part 2, episode number 68. And really go over the rebirth, if you will, of the NAWA. Excellent organization. So
maybe the Godfather could pay his cable bill so we won't have all the technical problems because of the friggin' hurricane.
Let me tell you something. I'm calling up tomorrow morning. Spectrum's out. Time Warner's back in.
Well, it could be the rain too. It could be the rain, but we'll check you next week here on the Mario Chaos Show.